Peace. This is World War Wrestling. I wanted to talk about AEW World's End like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Honestly, I wanted to talk about it as soon as the event was over, but I didn't really have all my ideas and content for World War Wrestling really together. I still don't right now, but I'm kind of in a fuck it phase where, it's going to get better as it goes on. For now, it's got to be what it's got to be. This is what it is right now. This is the level we're at right now. I think it's better to just get started and to move from there. And I wanted to critique the episode of Monday Night's Raw that came following AEW immediately after. But this is going to kind of be an AEW review, a World's End review, and just kind of like overall ideas of what's going on here. I'm not prepared for this now that I'm like in the middle of recording it. So I wish I did take some notes. If you give me a second, I can at least pull up the match card, and then I can at least move from, knowing exactly what the match card is versus what I've been doing. AEW Collision, I don't think I have a review for that. AEW Collision a week ago, don't have a review for that. AEW World's End, almost gone. All right. So I don't remember this pay-per-view at all now that I'm looking at it. There was 2 8-man tag team matches. That's kind of stupid. A single match between I saw the Andrade and Miro match. It just seemed like 2 ex-WWE guys fighting for a contract to get back to WWE. And it kind of seems like a loser goes back to WWE match. I know Andrade has really wanted Charlotte to leave WWE and come to a different promotion, but it just does not seem like that is ever going to happen. I don't know why on God's green earth you would like have a married woman manage you as a wrestler knowing what her husband is like. That seems really stupid. Andrade just seems like he's stuck because he can't be on the mic. He is an incredible in-ring performer. I would honestly say that Andrade, I feel like from the bottom of my heart, I feel like Andrade can beat the entire AEW roster. I feel like Andrade can beat Brock Lesnar. I feel like Andrade can beat the entire WWE roster. I feel like Andrade is one of the best wrestlers ever. I've been watching him for a really long time. He's one of the best guys ever. He can't talk for shit. That accent is so fucking heavy. It's like when Roosh is on the mic, and I feel like that's going to limit him. And honestly, it just kind of feels like racism, but we're going to move on. Singles match, Swerve Strickland versus Keith Lee. This did not happen. It ended up being Swerve Strickland versus Dustin Rhodes. And honestly, you probably could have broken down, if you knew earlier in that night that Keith Lee wasn't going to be there, you probably could have broke down these 8-man tag team matches. You gave like 20 to 30 minutes to Swerve Strickland and a wounded Dustin Rhodes. You could have just made an announcement. You could have broke down some of these 8-man tag team matches, especially the second one, I would say. Daniel Garcia, Mark, like it's just people complain about AEW booking, but like they're right to. Like they're complaining for great reasons. They're not complaining because it doesn't need to be spoken about. If you don't give feedback to the issues in AEW is not going to get better. I think some people take it too far, and it just becomes all about bashing AEW. It becomes all about how AEW isn't WWE. But, Impact Wrestling doesn't get that criticism. MLW doesn't get that criticism. ROH doesn't get that criticism. Why is the one credible threat for what WWE is doing? Why is it the one company that has sparked up in the past 3 to 4 years? And any business, that one wanted to say this for quite a long time, honestly. Now that I have a platform to say it, I can say it. Any business, the majority of businesses fail first 10 years. We all know that. 99% fail in the first 10 years. A good amount, 50% fail within the first 5 years. They're not showing any signs of failing or slowing down. Just because you don't like it for inexplicable reasons that aren't really justifiable, that aren't even really like real reasons to dislike AEW, because it's Tony Khan's investment, it's Tony Khan's money. Tony Khan is going to do everything in his power to make sure that he makes his money back and make sure he puts on a great show. If your product is booking, then you're going to be all over the booking of that show. It's just like a CEO is responsible for sales. The CEO is the top salesman in the company. You can't outsource that to somebody else. You can't expect someone else to make your money for you. He's going to be on the front lines trying to make that money back. He's going to be on the front lines trying to do this. And I feel like most people are honestly just jealous of Tony Khan. He's in a position that I dream of being in one day. I would love to own my own professional wrestling company. I would love to work with these guys on a one-on-one basis, work with them directly. I would love to do that one day. It's a dream of mine. He's living most professional, and the sad reality is when other people see you living their dream, when other people see you doing something that they desperately want to do, they shit on you for it. They don't tell you congratulations. They don't say good job. They don't support you. They don't buy your product. They shit on you for it. They insult you. They insult everything that you're doing because you represent something that they could have never done themselves. You represent opportunities they never would have took themselves. And that really just seems like Tony Khan to me. He's a rich kid. People are jealous of that already. His dad owns a football team. People are jealous. Like, he already had a life that most people would have been jealous on. And then he got his own freaking life on top of that. I feel like people are just kind of gone with the wind when it comes to Tony Khan. It's hard to take any valuable criticism about it unless it comes from corny or something like that. But even then, Jim Cornette's hatred towards AEW seems like a different place where it's coming from. I won't say jealousy. I feel like there's a lot of sincerity, and I feel like if you took Jim Cornette for who he is as a man and you separated that from what he's saying, he's giving great advice to AEW, and that's what everyone should be doing. I just think it's really popular for people to shit on AEW. Julia Hart versus Abaddon, shitty match. Julia Hart's a great competitor. Abaddon is not. She could have been, but I think she was injured. I don't blame her for that. I don't blame her for that, actually. I don't like her look though. Abaddon, when she first came on, had like this red hair, this like zombie gimmick thing that she had going on. I see Abaddon as a miniature Max the Impaler. And the idea of being like this woman Undertaker that I think is desperately needed in professional wrestling. I feel like you need a woman Undertaker, and I think either Max the Impaler or Abaddon can take that role. But I think they said it best here. If she doesn't intimidate you, because a lot of what she's doing isn't like scary, it's just weird. And I think that kind of encapsulates the gimmick very well. Abaddon does not have a very like imposing physique. She's not like a female specimen where she's like in the gym every day and super strong. She's probably bigger than a lot of girls that wrestle, but she's not bigger than the biggest names in professional wrestling. And that definitely works against her 100,000%. So if Julia Hart isn't afraid of you, and I believe there was some interference during this match as well, if I remember correctly, but if Julia Hart isn't intimidated by you, you ain't going too far. I feel like you need to go back for another month or so, rework your gimmick, and you need to give Abaddon some real matches under her belt. You can put her on ROH, you can put her on Collision, you can put her on Rampage. If you really want to build up a credible threat, this is how you do it. You take a champion that has either beaten the current champion in the past, even if it's like a long time ago, or came so close to beating them again. You give them match after match after match. You feed guys to them. And you make them competitive matches if you want to, but every single time, this guy finds a way to win. Every single time, this guy comes through clutch. And it's hard. If the fans aren't behind it, then you can't force it. But if someone sees somebody winning that has great charisma and they're a credible threat to the champion, it just seems like so much of these storylines are put together last minute. The MJF, Samoa Joe, Adam Cole storyline was like a year buildup, if not more than that. It's been going on for quite. It was going on since Punk was in the company. The buildup has been going on. especially since Adam Cole lost his job. It's been building up and going on. I don't understand why a lot of the women's matches don't get that same attention. With that, Tony Storm and Riho, that was a great match, actually. That was a phenomenal match. Tony Storm, probably the greatest thing to happen in professional wrestling. I don't know if it's the booty. I don't know, like, if it's the gimmick. I don't know if it's just her as a person. But Tony Storm is probably, like, the greatest thing that ever happened in professional wrestling. She is, like, she's not my favorite wrestler in AEW. There's a lot of things I like in AEW, but she's definitely, like, one of my most favorite things. Like, if I watch AEW, Athena and Tony Storm are, like, the two things that I'm watching it for. I consider ROH AEW. Christian Cage and Adam Copeland. I hated this match. I hate Christian Cage. And I know that's like a good thing in this industry, and that's not like a count against them, but like I absolutely abhor and hate Christian Cage. I am so ready for Luchasaurus to turn against him. But I feel like for as intelligent as Luchasaurus is, it feels like the Brock Lesnar effect, you know? That for a long time, Brock Lesnar wasn't allowed to talk on the microphone because his voice ruined the gimmick. Once you heard Brock Lesnar start talking, he used to sound like a big tough guy. He sounds like a redneck hillbilly farmer with his voice up here and super high. Hey, how you doing, guys? How you doing, buddy? That's how fucking Brock Lesnar sounds in real life. You know, that's not the greatest Brock Lesnar impersonation, but it really wasn't that fucking far from it either, to be honest with you. From Saskatchewan, fucking middle of nowhere, Canada. You know, he went from the middle of fucking nowhere to America to the middle of fucking nowhere of Canada. He doesn't sound like he wants to talk to a lot of people. Or was I don't know where it was. Christian Cage versus Adam Copeland. Adam Copeland looks very intimidating, has not moved like he was very intimidating. I feel like that match with Randy Orton took a lot out of Edge. I felt like it really built Edge up to something that was completely indescribable. They said it was going to be the greatest show ever, the greatest match ever, and it was not mid Randy Orton versus Edge, but it was not the greatest show ever. It had a lot of build up, it had a lot of moments, but it just feels like a lot of these guys are trying to kill themselves in the middle of the ring. Adam Copeland seems like one of those guys that want to die in the middle of a wrestling ring. Like some guys break an arm or they break a leg or they bust themselves wide open. Jon Moxley has to bleed over everyone that he meets and everyone that he knows in order to feel something inside himself. I feel like Adam Copeland, after breaking his neck, feels like completely invincible, or he knows there's only but so much time left before he can't do this at all anymore. And he's trying to make up for lost time, A. B, he's trying to put on a great show. And C, I think it was too much time off without reflection. That what Adam Copeland said was that when he was injured and he was like retired, he couldn't wrestle, so he didn't watch anything. I don't think that was the same thing with CM Punk. I think maybe CM Punk was still watching. I feel like a lot of these guys, when they take time off, they're still watching the product because they love professional wrestling. Adam Copeland seems like he really loves Adam Copeland. The spot with the fire table was super mid. It was so mid that they had backup lighter fluid because they felt like it wasn't going to work. And Taz tried to explain it, but if you knew that already, why didn't you use a different type of table? Why didn't you use a different kind of substance? If you had like 5 freaking people in the match, like how could you not have set that up better? Nick Wayne sucks. Nick Wayne looks like the average everyday white kid in a position of the awkwardest, weirdest thing ever. His dad is that. I don't know how you make Nick Wayne a one-day redeemable character, because if you take away this patriarch gimmick, he probably would have been great. If you would have had him go on to feud more with Swerve Strickland or feud more with Darby Allin, probably would have been great. This Christian Cage gimmick, like, Christian Cage is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I remember Christian Cage's run on TNA, not Impact, but TNA, And even then, like I remember like being a young kid in like middle school or so, being like, wow, Christian Cage is like the smartest wrestler ever. Everything about his moveset, everything about how he acts in the ring, like everything about him. And I think he was a babyface. He was even a world champion. Like he is like I feel like the issue with Christian Cage is that he's one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time, and he is still the most underrated professional wrestler of all time. But the way that he acts and the way that he behaves does not make that an achievable, crossable gap to then give him his roses. It puts him in a position where you never want to see him smell flowers ever again in his life, if not pushing up daisies. And everything about this match was that. It was honestly a 10 out of a 10 match. If the table spot had worked, I would say 5-star, 10 out of 10. The table spot, the chair, that did not work. But everything about this storyline was phenomenal. Having Edge beat Christian Cage and win the match, giving him the shortest AEW title run of all time. Having Luchasaurus come out to finish off Edge, and now having to reconcile and process what every man would do versus what your father is asking of you. It was fucking brilliant. Like I don't know if Christian is writing this himself. I don't know if there's a team. I don't know if there's creative. I don't know if there's a Tony Khan idea. I don't know. But Christian Cage needs to be going up against Samoa Joe or MJF. Like there has to be something down the line where the patriarchy is taking on all these other amazing large. Like one thing AEW does better than any other wrestling promotion right now is that they have all these larger than life factions. They have all these larger than life groups that really dominate the scene like no other ever could. Eddie Kingston versus John Moxley was probably the greatest professional wrestling match that I've ever seen in my entire life, with no exaggeration. There was no extreme rules. There was no DQs. They had to stay inside the box. They had to stay inside the rules. This was a just singles wrestling match that defined what pro wrestling is. The history of these two men, how far they go back, the fact that Eddie Kingston got completely smashed, but Eddie Kingston here essentially beat every member of the Blackpool Combat Club. He's not gonna take that lightly, I don't believe. I don't think they're just gonna take they're either gonna break up or they're gonna come back and get that ass. Like I don't see anyone the whole squad loses. And it brings me to that bullshit for real. That I feel like in order for this to have even been a thing, because I see that bullshit because I just saw Daniel Bryan on New Japan Pro Wrestling, is that Eddie Kingston is a New Japan Pro Wrestler and an AEW wrestler, but he won those matches on screen in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and there's no wrestling promotion that's going to be like, okay, we have this champion, and you can beat our champion on your show. They had this entire tournament knowing that Eddie Kingston could not lose the tournament because of his contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he just bodied everybody, but he deserved it. You know, he's not a bad wrestler. He's not a bad talent. He's not bad on the mic. But I swear to God that John Moxley was going to win this. He was going to redeem the Blackpool Combat Club, especially since the Blackpool Combat Club had to go through so much infighting in order to get here. But again, it just kind of defines, like, once again, these larger than life promotions that AEW has, that I think these guys are all about that competition. And I feel like they view each other as the biggest competition that they're going to get. So I don't even think they get mad about wrestling each other. I don't even think they get mad about beating one another. I feel like they just go back harder at it next time. This did not do anything negative to John Moxley, but this did amazing things to Eddie Kingston's career and Eddie Kingston's notoriety and solidifying him as a great. Because I don't really feel like in Eddie Kingston's Impact run, he didn't really get his fair justice or a fair shake. Early on in Eddie Kingston's AEW career, he didn't really get a fair shake. I believe he was on Ring of Honor as well in the intermediary before Ring of Honor was sold by Sinclair and then purchased by Tony Khan. I feel like he was on Ring of Honor because I definitely saw him doing something before AEW was like a thing. I might be getting him confused with Brody King. And that brings us to the main event and what happened after the main event. The actual match of MJF versus Samoa Joe, to me, was essentially a squash match. It seemed competitive, but it felt like it was essentially just a squash match. I don't really see MJF being a legitimate threat to Samoa Joe. And now that MJF has beaten the entire roster, and I could say that he did not seem like a legitimate threat to Samoa Joe, it made this entire storyline just kind of seem like Oz. Like it just seemed like some kind of weird prison fiction that Samoa Joe from the very beginning kind of bitched MJF. Like this has been going on for so long that Samoa Joe has just been hunting down MJF. Like he knew he could beat him. Like he's been beating guys like MJF his entire career. It was just like